Gamers, this build absolutely cooks everything in GMs, and way more than honestly even I expected. I went into this GM with the idea of having a healing support build, and somehow came out creating this monster. And it has some insane CC, some really good survivability, and great damage thanks to an exotic I honestly didn't even have on my radar for GMs this season. Now before I get into the build, if you guys do enjoy the content, a like and sub would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys. So this build's focus is to use our abilities to spread damage around like crazy, while also applying good crowd control thanks to the new exotic chess piece, Mataiodoxia, which turns our needles into suspending burst needles, and can pop anti-barrier shields in GMs in just one melee, which is insane. And the suspending burst can happen from just defeating an enemy that has been hit by an arcane needle, or hitting 3 needles on a higher health target, which is crazy because it's an even larger radius. Now during Transcendence, you can almost infinitely spam the suspension explosion on higher health targets thanks to just the constant ability spam you'll be getting, which is just so strong. And speaking of Transcendence, thanks to the constant damage being spread and our exotic weapon being Outbreak perfected, we will have Transcendence up insanely quick, allowing us to just snowball crazy ability spam all the time. Now for the build, we're going to be using Song of Flame, since it's basically a walking new well of radiance that grants 90% damage resist to you and 30% to your allies, radiant to yourself, and then also scorch to kinetic and solar weapons to both you and nearby allies. If you make sure to use Transcendence before popping Song of Flame, then you can add an extra 20% DR on top of Song of Flames, giving you 110% damage resist, making you honestly unkillable. It's actually insane. The abilities we are using is going to be Phoenix Dive for quick heals, Arcane Needle to spread Unravel and then synergize with our exotic chess piece, and a Storm Grenade plus Facet of Dominance, so we can apply Jolt to enemies for both overload champs and spreading a damage around just like crazy. Now the aspects used in this build are going to be Devour for on-demand heals from getting kills and intrinsic demo, plus Helion for a solar buddy to spam Scorch to enemies. Now this one can really be changed how you see fit. I mean, if you prefer stasis turrets for its great CC, then yeah, go ahead, swap it out for Helion. Personally, I just really enjoy Helion, maybe because it's new, I don't know, but I feel like it's just a solid pick since it can cause Scorch and Ignitions, which is really nice. Now, the fragments used in this build are going to be Facet of Grace, so when we defeat enemies with Outbreak, we get extra Transcendence energy, and defeating targets with Song of Flame will help our allies build up Transcendence faster as well. Facet of Solitude to cause Severing Bursts on crits with Outbreak to make enemies deal 40% less damage to us, and also to spawn Entangles for extra AoE damage, which, that's always welcome. Next is Facet of Ruin, so when we use our Arcane Needles to apply Unravel, suspend enemies, or even stun anti-barrier champions, we can gain Radiant damage buff, and yes, I know about the seasonal mod, this is still really just a good synergistic thing with the build, so I definitely just like to throw it in there. Next is the one I talked about before, which is Facet of Dominance, which will grant our Storm Grenades Jolt, which is a fantastic AoE damage and can deal with overload champions. Plus now our Transcendence Grenades will apply Weaken, which is very strong to add on top of how good the grenades already are. Now the last fragment is going to be Facet of Courage, to give our light abilities extra damage to enemies that have a darkness debuff applied to them. This one can really be changed around to anything else you honestly prefer. I just like the added damage I can get for my Storm Grenades and Song of Flame, since Unravel is going to be spread like crazy, so almost all enemies are going to be applied with a darkness debuff. Okay, now the mods used in this build are a Kinetic Siphon to spawn orbs from Outbreak, Ashes to Assets for super gains on grenade kills, and a Heavy Ammo Finder on the helmet, a Firepower and Heavy Handed on the gloves to spawn orbs on melee kills and grenade kills, resist mods on the chest piece, double kinetic surges on the boots plus a recuperation for some extra heals and orb pickup, and then on the class item, outreach for a bump of melee energy on class ability use, powerful attraction to pull in orbs when we use our class ability, and then a reaper mod for an orb on the first weapon kill after we use our class ability. Now I'll also go over the artifact mods that are important with this build. We're going to be using Elemental Siphon, so rapid kills with Outbreak can spawn in a Fire Sprite, which on pickup will give us 20% extra grenade energy, so that's pretty nice. Radiant Orbs to grant Radiant on orb pickup. Counter Energy to grant energy to our least charged ability when you or an ally stuns a champion. Shield Crush for faster grenade recharge and damage thanks to being radiant almost all the time. And then lastly, Transference for the increased damage to melees and grenade during Transcendence. Now the weapons for this build are pretty simple and kind of just let you sit back and beam stuff, which is really comfy. Like I said before, we're going to be using Outbreak Perfected with the perk Rewind Rounds. Oh my god, it's so hard to say that. Rewind Rounds. And man, this thing just melts through everything. I mean, the prior buffs to pulses on Final Shape's launch really have turned this thing into a beast. Now the other weapons I'm going to be using are going to be an Indebited Kindness with Volt Shot, so I have another way of dealing with Overload champions, and sidearms are also unstoppable this season, so it's a nice 2-for-1 option. And then lastly, a heavy weapon that just matches the surges for the week. So week 1 is Solar and Void, so I've been using Apex to burst down champions pretty quickly. This build really was super chill and fun to use. It made runs super quick and easy for me and my friends. I mean, we were banging out like 18, 17-minute runs, which is pretty quick, I feel like, for Glassway, even though mostly me and my friends were just trolling and throwing the whole time. But there's a really cool feature as well with this exotic. When multiple people are using Mataiodoxia, then your suspending explosion stacks on enemies will actually work together, which is such a neat feature and makes this exotic even stronger than it already is, since now the both of you could work together to apply arcane needles on enemies to just cause constant suspending explosions, which does a pretty good chunk of damage on the explosion, and then also just has a massive radius of all the enemies it'll suspend in the air, and it's just going to help as well spread around all that unravel damage. I think this exotic is so underrated. It's so good. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the build. It is really super fun to play since it's, in my opinion, just an all-around solid build with not many holes to it. I hope it can help you guys take advantage of double Nightfall drops this week. So good luck on your farms there, gamers. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.